Now we're getting ready to begin to create a pencil rendering of an owl, the owl of your choice. I'm going to be using a burrowing owl. I think burrowing owls are a lot of fun to draw, and they also have beautiful patterns on their feathers. And the point of rendering is to create a drawing that is as realistic as you can make it, in the sense that it very faithfully represents the physical characteristics of your subject. In other words, the shape of the beak, the size of the eyes, the texture of the legs, the pattern on the feathers. And so we'll be working slowly and carefully. And I will, we always want to begin with a good preliminary sketch. This is the preliminary sketch I'm going to use. It's drawn from 2 or 3 different references, and we'll talk about that also as we go forward. One of the things you want to remember in your preliminary sketch is that you want to observe on your contour. When you're at the contour stage, you put in your basic forms and you begin to work on that contour, you want to notice the direction the feathers move along the silhouette of your owl's body and head, so that they'll kind of help keep you on track once you begin to shade. And a lot of times this almost feels like meditation. It's so soothing to sit and just quietly shade that you may find that your attention wanders and you may not be paying attention to which direction the feathers should be going. So having those little, that little outside texture sort of pointing the way is really helpful. Also, look for any negative spaces, which are always easy to spot, easy to draw. They're simple geometric shapes, but getting them right will ensure that the body parts next to them are correctly arranged. In this case, the legs and the talons of the little burrowing owl are spaced correctly because the negative space is the same as in my reference. I've put down some of the directional lines for the rows of pattern feathers on his breast. You don't want to draw in patterns as outlines on your preliminary sketch. You'll have a lot of trouble lifting those later. In just a moment, we're going to stick down our kneaded eraser and reduce this sketch to a very pale shadow before we begin to shade it. And people often say, well, why would you go to this much trouble and then erase so much of it? And well, part of the reason is that your preliminary sketch, besides placing your owl on the paper, also helps to educate you and help you understand your subject before you begin to shade it. So once you're happy with your preliminary sketch, you erase it as pale as possible, and then you have a clean version of that sketch that you can begin to shade. These marks are just crop marks for my scanner, if you're wondering what they might be. Okay, we have our freshly erased owl image ready to begin to shade. I have sharpened my pencil, and once again it's imperative to try to keep a sharp point. With a softer lead, such as the 4B, you have to be really diligent, because as you shade, if you're covering a lot of paper, you're going to wear that point down quickly, but you'll get such a, particularly with the texture, you'll get such a better result if you keep your point really sharp, that it's well worth the effort of remembering to do that. I like to begin with the eyes, and I'm going to do that now. I just feel like it sort of sets the tone for the drawing. This fellow doesn't have a smooth line above his eyes. He has a little fringe of feathers above them. So instead of drawing the top of the eye as a line, I've broken it up in little line segments to suggest those feathers, and we'll get back to them in a moment. Also, remember, your wrist is a mechanical hinge, and if you're right-handed, it's easy for you to draw a lovely arc going this way. Going the other way, it's very awkward, and particularly when you have something symmetrical like these 2 eyes, you need to take every possible step to make sure that your arc is nice and smooth. So I'm going to turn the paper so that as I draw the arcs of the eyes, I'm working with the direction of my wrist and not against it. I'm going to just vary his bold line around his eyes, so I'm going to very gently put that in. Okay, and again, I'm going to flip the paper to draw the other eye so that I have the advantage again in drawing that arc. Okay. All right, now I can go over it to darken it a bit. But you want to build up your darks very gradually. You don't want to have a very prematurely dark picture, because what will happen is you'll accidentally cover up the areas that you really would like to remain light, and particularly in a bird that has a lot of patterning, such as this bird does. You'll want to reserve those lighter values so that you'll have some white and some very light colored contrast going on. So don't color everything in dark right off the bat. You can always add more dark as you go. Okay, got these big bold edges on his eyes. Now I'll go ahead and put in the pupils. Look carefully at your reference and don't make the pupils too large. Owls are one of the world's most popular motifs for decorating, and the eyes, because they are so beautiful, often are drawn oversized, but you want to try your best to get the proportions accurate for your rendering. It's not a decorative piece of work, but actually what we're doing is actually providing visual information. So we want our information to be as accurate as we can make it. Okay, here is the dark of the pupil. It's a very rich black with a sharp edge. Whoops, and my hand slipped a little there. So I'm going to pinch my eraser into a very thin wedge and fix that up a bit. Come back and put it back in. This is not a process to rush through. This is a drawing technique that is slow and methodical, and for that purpose it's really good to sort of mentally prepare to have a very quiet, relaxing time with it. Don't try to hurry. And also allow yourself, if you begin to tire, go to something else. You don't want to tax your body, but you also don't want to, as your arm tires and your shoulders and back may tire, your drawing will not, you won't be able to pay the attention to the drawing that it really deserves. So be sure and take breaks. Okay, shading the colored part of the eye with a very light touch. There's no highlight in this owl's eyes, and so there's no distinct caustic either. But it does have a shadow that runs beneath those fringe feathers. Okay. And the other eye also has some areas of shadow. Darken the pupil as well. And we'll shade this eye the same way we did that one. It's also worth noting that the shadow on the eyes often is not going to be equal. This eye, in my case, has less shadow on it than this one does. This one has a deeper shadow in the corner of the eye. Okay, now go ahead. Now that I have the eyes in place, I can go ahead and begin to look at shading the head overall. I'm going to use very soft strokes. I'm going to let my pencil strokes move in the direction of the feather texture. There's a very dark pocket of shadow right here in the corner of this eye, but I'm not going to just black it in the way I did the pupil. I'm going to build it up very gradually using strokes that move in the direction of those fine feathers that are growing just at the corner of the eye. Okay, there we go. Shadow also comes down inside of the eye. And I'm just taking my cue from the very pale remnants of the preliminary sketch. Okay. Again on this side. Very soft little strokes, barely touching the paper with a very sharp point. And wherever you see that the feathers are fine and short and soft on your reference, that's where your pencil strokes should also be fine and short and soft. You can almost think of it as if you are drawing on top of the actual owl rather than on a flat sheet of paper. And let your hand behave that way. Be careful not to make an area too dark if there's a lot of light in that area. If you have a lot of white or pale feathers, you don't want to shade that area in too darkly. You want to leave paper there, and don't worry that it will not look shaded. The patterning and the shading around it will certainly help it to look the way that it should. Fine feathers, so fine light strokes. These are the feathers that surround the beak. Building the shadows very gradually. If you get to a point where you feel you've put down too much, just erase lightly and come back again. Okay, you can just see the nostrils visible through the overhanging feathers, so I'll include those. Okay. Very, very soft shading. And you can see how it begins to very gently build. The look of those downy feathers around the face. I'm going to continue to just add these tiny lines in to build in this shaded area here, and then we'll come back and look at the patterning on top of the head.